Well, all right, Benji and Brady, welcome in to another episode. Guys, I feel like we're knocking out so many of these. I'm having to constantly go back and remember what episode we're on because
I know. Is it 17?
We're just consistent. We're keeping them going. But we're on season 2, number 8.
Season 2. Okay.
With 18 overall. Benji, just real quick, you were sharing with us a little bit before we hopped on. Share with our listeners, we just hit, what was it, the 3,100 listening mark?
3,100 streams, and thank you all for tuning in. And we have new listeners, so if you're newly listening, go check out the other episodes. We've got a lot of great information to help you in your business, but really appreciate all of you dialing in and checking us out.
Welcome to the craziness. Welcome to the crazy
Crazy.
So, but yeah, we're number 18. It's been awesome. You know, we're getting a lot of good response. I'm excited about today's episode.
Yeah,
Brady, this is something that you have been working with us as part of your team for Serve Protein Wilson for probably the better part of a year. I would say maybe a year and a half.
At least, yeah.
At least since last Christmas.
That's right.
When we sat and did our strategic planning, this was a big emphasis that you and Benji both said, hey, going into 2024, this is what we're doing, which has set the course for you guys moving into 2025. So, and that's goal setting. Yeah, so we're going to jump into some of this. And let me tell you, listeners, there's a lot of great information in here. I promise you, we talked about before, we felt like it's a lot. So there's potential for two episodes. Could be a bonus. So we'll see how today goes.
Might be.
So Brady, share with us a little bit. Share with us just
sure.
Jump in. Just this, like I said, probably about this time last year. This was a big part of your strategic plan, and just for business, for personal, even in our one-on-one meetings. This is something that you had challenged the leadership team to do, and it's been something that's important. I've got my own ways. I talked about. I'm going to share today, and how I took some of those things you taught us and applied it for me.
And after today, Adam, we might tweak your way a little bit. We'll see. You know.
Before we were talking, I was like, Brady, don't ask me what my long-term goals are because I probably should have been better with that.
No, this is a this is a subject that's near and dear to me. I love talking about this. You know, Benji said maybe 2 episodes. Who knows? I mean, I could talk about this subject for days. But here's what I want to say first. All right, we're 2025. I know we can't believe it, but we're in 2025. Adam, start out about goal setting. Don't tune us out just yet. Okay? Yeah. If you heard that and you go, oh my gosh, I don't want to learn about goal setting and New Year's resolutions and all that stuff. Don't tune us out yet. I promise we're gonna have some good meat in here.
There's a difference to me between resolutions though and goals.
I know, but some people hear the word and they're like, okay,
another goal, New Year, another goal. I get it. What
do the kids say nowadays? You're done. But we're not. Don't be done. Don't be done with us. Okay.
Well, that's going to be in a reel somewhere.
Actually, I think the word is slay. I have no idea what slay means, but I hear it all the time.
There's got to be like a dictionary for all that. But so let's talk about goal setting. Like what does it mean in goal setting? And listen, there's all kind of ideas out there, thoughts. I would encourage you guys even after this and go get some books, and we can recommend some stuff to you. And there's lots of material out there. But what does it mean? Today, here's what we're going to focus on, and even the title of the episode is Be a Part of the 3%. So what does that mean? There's a guy by the name of Tracy. He's a leadership guru in the marketplace, and this is what he says. He has a stat. It says 3% of people actually write down their goals. Okay, so 3% of people write down their goals. But only
really
one,
small.
Yeah, that's really small. And only 1% actually do something about the goals that they wrote down. Okay, so Adam, you've heard me say this. Benji, you've heard me say this. Even to our team, we're a big Ziglar fan, and this is what he says. He says, if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we kind of talked about this on strategic planning a little bit.
We did.
The last episode was around that. So just so you know that strategic planning is the main focus. We want to set the goals to help us achieve the strategic plan. So that's kind of where we're at now.
Yeah.
So let's just kind of, I like to break it down a little bit. Let's think about this in our world, okay? So in the U.S., I don't know how many people are in the U.S., but this means that only 10 million people in the U.S. write down goals, all right? So let's think about your specific world, all right? Where you go to church, kids' activities, schools, the people you come in interaction with. This 3% means that 3 out of every 100 people write down their goals, and only 1 out of 100 actually do something about the goals that they wrote down. So here's what we want to do. We want to challenge you guys. Hey, let's make 2025 different. And the key you're going to hear is going to be consistency. So it's not like shoot for the moon. And if you're like that, that's great. But you may have a small goal that you want to try to accomplish in 2025. But I just encourage you to get into the practice of it, because once you get into the practice of it, you'll keep doing it and you'll make it a habit. So,
and real quick math, as you were talking about that. So this is based on 2023 numbers, but this is estimated 335 million people in the U.S.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot.
A lot of people.
And I think that's a big number. And you're saying that, that's have that massive number. This is how many people have actually taken time to say, this is what I'm going to do.
This is my priority. This is what's important.
When you look at it from that perspective, 335 million people, 10 million people might write down their goals, and then 1% of those people actually act on them.
Yep.
Is there a wonder why there's so many people that are successful, that are what people say, hey, I'm using the term higher up, by the way. They have a higher, status about them. I don't mean specifically about them, but they're able to accomplish a lot because they actually wrote their goals down.
The 1%ers to me it's a real. I know it's a term used in a lot of different, areas, but a 1%er to me is it's a very realistic thing. You're saying it right now, but like goal setting, are you a 1%er that not only writes them, but actually does
executes
them?
Yeah, for sure.
Executes it. Yeah. So, it's if you look at that number, that's a staggering number of what it shows to me is people are they're just doing life, right? Like they're just
that's right
doing what they got to do. Live, and I hate, because this is something Emily and I have always tried to do, is get away from the paycheck to paycheck. How do we set things away? How do we build? And you guys taught us that. How do you build your family tree? And that's something Emily and I do a lot too for those goal settings. How do we not only do things for us, but make sure that we're preparing our tree for later on afterwards? So
that's right.
It's just cool when you said that. So 335 million.
So here's what we want to do. We want to make this particular episode or multiple episodes interactive. Okay. So if you'll play along with us, at home or in your car. Well, maybe not.
Don't do it in your car.
Don't do it while you're driving.
Use Siri. Have Siri do her thing.
We're running. That could be interesting.
But grab a notebook. Grab your phone. There's going to be a couple things that we're going to ask you to do, some actionable steps, just to try to get into the posture of setting goals. So here we go. So let's talk about, guys, first of all, like, why do goals matter? Why is it important? I think we all want to live better lives. We want to have stronger businesses. We want to have deeper relationships. But without goals, it's like running a race and there's no finish line. How fun is that?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So, and this is not just about business, as we just said. It's about personal goals and professional goals. But let's think about this. When you set a clear goal, you want to know what you're aiming for. And so to look at the faith component of it, the spiritual component of it, Proverbs 29:18 says, where there is no vision, the people perish. Where there is no vision, the people perish. So God is the one that gives us the goals. And we're going to talk about the faith component of it too. But goals give us vision and they give us direction. So where are we going? How are we going to get there? So, what about you guys? Has there ever been a time that you had, and it could be a small goal, it could be a big goal, that you wrote it down or you thought about it or you put it somewhere and you were able to accomplish that?
I got one.
Go for it.
I had a goal. I had never been overseas before, like outside the United States, besides the islands. I'm not counting the islands, but like actually go overseas. We wrote it down 2 years ago that we wanted to go to London and just to explore what England was like. And actually, we decided we were going to take our oldest to her senior trip. And not only did we do London, but we were able to go to Paris as well while we were there. Took the train down. So because we had written it down, I think that we had, we set ourselves up for success. Now, I will say we had to save up to get there.
Sure.
Because that was a lot of money.
That was
to do
probably
that,
a separate goal.
Yeah, it absolutely was. But to your point, we wrote it down, and it became on our bucket list that we wanted to achieve this, and we were able to accomplish that this last year.
Yeah. No, I definitely, mine was, I think I achieved that this past year. It was funny because in a lot of our one-on-ones, Brady, you and I would sit and talk, and we talk about, well, you'd always ask, what do you want to do? Like, how do we want to, what is the next step? And, I think even at one point we was talking about like, well, Adam, if you weren't here, like, what would you do? And I kind of mentioned to you how much, being church creative and being in that world, it's just, to me, that's always given me value. Like, I feel like it's different than just, working for, a client that's trying to, do marketing and things. It's you're creating life things or life content, life building content. And so that was something that was big. And I took that this year and stepping out, and being able to kind of change life and positions to move into a creative director role for church. That was something that Emily and I actually kind of looked at. Now, I had no idea what was happening this past year, but that's something she and I began talking about even into 2023, moving into 2024. Like, what is it you want to do? Where I got my joy from, the things I do, things that I did that I enjoyed. So one of those, I know that was for me, was getting to do that and just seeing what this being in this type of life is like working in the church, doing it, what it's like to do ministry full time. Because the only option I've ever had or opportunity I ever had was like part-time, bivocational, just serving, not even paid, just serving. So that was something for us this past year that we did. So now I've got to change that and be like, all right, well, you achieved it. So now what's
the next goal?
What's the next goal? Like, where do you want to go next?
That's a great point you bring up too, Adam, with, I think to Brady asked us to mention one. And I think a lot of people will do that and they achieve the goal and then they go, all right, that's it. I'm not going to write anymore. I'm not going to take the next step. I've got a running story I'll tell you later about something that Sarah wants to achieve this next year. And I told her if she would let me, I would love to achieve it with her. Actually, I won't actually achieve it with her, but she'll be probably running way ahead of me, and that's okay. but to your point, they don't ever take the next step because some people are satisfied with even achieving the goal that they forget there could be another goal out there in front of them. Got to go achieve the next goal.
Yeah, I saw. I was watching a clip and like Jake Paul and them, like they started as YouTubers and now they're boxing and doing all this stuff, and people see them and they're like, oh, they're just doing money grabs or doing this. I'm like, but if you actually sit and listen to the two of them, they're very savvy business individuals.
Yeah, for sure.
And you're just talking about the next thing. It made me think about it. I was watching a podcast they were doing where they were talking to an individual who just blew up, right? Like they got famous, like things are now. Something happens, goes viral. Next thing you know, they're famous. And they're like, they ask them like, is that what you always want to be known for? Or what's your next step? Like, what's your long term? Like, okay, viral only lasts for so long. It's the same thing with goals. You achieve it, you get, it's sometimes you work really hard to achieve it and you get to it. And sometimes it's quicker to get to that goal that you're trying to get. But once you've achieved that, once you've gotten there, what is your next step? So what are you going to do to continue to grow or to continue to do more? You can't just achieve it and be done. I feel like you always have to be growing, doing something.
So did you say Jake Paul or Logan Paul?
Both of them.
Okay,
they were both on the podcast.
So I thought you did. But Jake Paul's to your point, very smart business guy. Don't let him fool you.
No.
He fought the greatest fighter of all times. Now, no one may convince me that it was a staged fight. I mean, but Tyson,
a lot of talk out there.
60 years old or however old he is, got paid $20 million for literally 15 minutes to stand there and not get hit. That sounds like a deal.
It is. And that's why I was saying, people see them and they're like, well, they're just trying to money grab. I'm like, no, they set a goal and he achieved. And he even said in that he always wanted to fight. Like that was somebody on his list. Didn't matter how old he was. He's like, I just want to say I got in the ring with him. And how many people can say they did?
Yeah, it's true.
And survive and walked out.
Yeah. Then his brother got called out.
But he's a big wrestler. So I thought it was really interesting, and that's something that I saw that a few weeks ago, and I've always thought, okay, well, as I saw that, I'm like, that's a great mindset. Well, you can't just stick to what you have now. You have to think, once you've achieved it, what's coming.
Yeah. So, I mean, and thank you guys for sharing. I mean, the goals, what they do is they help us focus on what our priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
And, we talked about personal and professional goals, and a lot of times, and again, not New Year's resolutions, but really creating habits of, what are your faith goals for next year? What are your fitness goals for next year? What are your organizational goals for next year? Those types of things. And, this is something that for Benji and myself, our father, he was a huge goal setter and really got this practice. And this is something that me and my wife do, Melissa. We do this at least at the end of the year. We'll go ahead and set the goals that we want for next year or the coming up year. And then typically each quarter we go back and review those, and we follow up and say, okay, what have we accomplished this quarter? Is there something that needs to come off? Is there something that needs to go on? What are the things that God is calling us to do, and how do we want to partner with that? One of the goals that I had for this year, and this is one of them, was to read 12 books. And I think I've talked about it on the podcast before, but I think I'm on number 18 or 19, and the year's not over. So I think my personal opinion is that most people want to do this practice, but they don't know how to do the practice. I think as individuals, as human beings, this is something like, that's a good idea, but you've got all these things that are out there and all this noise. Like, how do I practically do this? And so our answer to you, for our listeners is you got to find something that works for you. Yeah. You can find a good system, you can read a good book, get all the ideas in the world, but you need to find out what works for you. Because if it doesn't work for you, Adam, you've heard us, we've talked to our leadership team, there's a certain organizational thing that I do, and with my calendar and my to-do list and all these things, and I'm very electronic.
Yeah.
But for everybody, it may not work like that. You may write things down, on pen and paper. That's okay. Whatever you do, whatever your habit is, whatever your practice is.
We still love you people that do that, by the way.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So let's talk about so we talked about why goals matter. I think we've got that covered, and it's really important. It focuses our brain on what we want to do, but here's the next step. We don't need to leave it there.
Yeah.
So here comes the powerful moment. The powerful moment is when you actually write down those goals. Okay? Yeah. Now, write them on a sheet of paper, put them in your iPhone, put them somewhere to where you can see them and they're readily available. So that's really where the magic happens, is when we start to write it down. When you put pen to paper, when you put fingers to a keyboard, it's not a concept anymore. It's something that becomes real. It's not a vague it's not a vague idea that just sits in your head. So write it down. So let me give you an example, okay? Instead of saying, this would be like a business example, okay? Next year, 2025, I want to grow my business. Okay. Well,
what does that mean?
That's a good goal. But what you might do is you might write down and in the further along, we're going to talk about like how do we break this down. But the example might be, I want to increase revenue in quarter 3 by 20%. Now that's a goal, right? And we're going to talk about getting specific and all that. But now that you got something very specific and very measurable, so here's what we want to do. Wherever you're at, wherever you're listening, here comes the interactive portion of the podcast. So right now, take a moment, jot down one personal goal, one professional goal that you'd like to do for next year, for 2025. Seriously, do it. Maybe you got to pause the episode and write it down. Don't worry about if it's perfect. Just get it out of here, get it out of your head, and write it down.
Yeah. Well, and while they're doing that, I mean one thing if you're still listening while you're doing it, one thing I always say is it doesn't have to be huge, right? Like increasing by 20% in quarter 3 could be massive depending on your business or what's going on. It could be something as simple as just your day, right? Like things to control through your day. I was telling you guys. So for me, I carry it's called a Lockbee case. I'm really big on
It's a
these
what?
It's called a Lockbee. And so literally it holds it has a knife, my pen, and then some other things inside. But for our listeners, it's a field note that goes inside. It's a little field note. It's very small. I mean, it can fit in your pocket. So I carry two of them. I carry one that I can pull out easily that I write my thoughts in. Like if I have a thought, I'll be honest with you. I wrote one that just said, why do I always feel the need to look at someone else's work before I create my own? That was a thought I had. And I was like, I need to write it down so I remember that. So one of them is my thoughts. The other one, though, is my goals. And as Brady's talking about, this is where I start, because writing large for me, it's tougher. Because if you ask me, well, what do you want to do in 5 years? I feel like my life has changed so much. I don't know, and I'm like, change jobs, but I'm still been blessed with the opportunity to still work with you guys. But I'm also in a new position. I have the opportunity to do some more work for other clients that I wasn't able to before. So I'm like, I don't feel like I've had a second to take a breath and be like, what do I want to do?
You're gonna need an administrative assistant for too long.
That's why I have my wife. I tell her all the time. She's our CEO.
Emily, did you hear that, Emily? Emily,
she's the CEO.
Oh, there you go. That's a great way to put it.
So for me, for our listeners and then online, so every day I write down the date and I split it what's called a 3-day system. It's typically, what do I want to do before lunch? What do I want to do after lunch? And what do I want to do in the evening? And I write down, and it's simple as this. I kid you not. Get up by 3:30 a.m. I write it down. Get up at 3:30 a.m. so I can, and I literally write, go to the gym, take a cold shower. Simple, easy. These are things I should be doing anyways, but I write them down to make sure I do. Then I call it, so it's day 1, day 2, and day 3. So day 1, a lot of it, like for instance, when I was with you guys, it was answer Google reviews. It's attend intake meeting, attend, our leadership meeting, attend those things. Maybe it's, edit something for the church, whatever it is. I would have different things. And then after lunch, if I had another meeting, it would be attend recon meeting, attend this. So these are things that I should be doing, but they're actionable steps. And it gives me to do it. And then even into the evening, it allowed me to say, have dinner with my family, like relax, like these kind of things. So I would write these every day. Typically the night before, I would think about, what do I have to do today? So like today, I got up, went to the gym. I wrote down I have to record the podcast. I know when I get to the office this morning, I've got to, work on these projects and I need to knock these off. So for me, there's smaller actionable steps, and I carry this everywhere I go. So it stays in my back pocket, stays in my bag. I write it down. I keep several notes. So one for thoughts, one for goals, one for other things. So I keep these little field notes everywhere I go. So for me, you're just talking about as you're listening, it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be.
No,
I want to make $100,000 next year. Right. Write down small goals, because what you're doing is you're training your mind to be in the habit to do. And this is how I had to start. Because when you brought it up to us, Brady, and you were like, what is your 5 and 10 year plan? I had no idea. And I honestly had no idea whether it was family, personal, business, whatever it is. And so for me to train my mind, same as running, going to the gym, I had to start small, right? You don't jump into a half marathon. You start small and do these things.
That's right.
By the way, speaking of half marathon, Adam, I did that one year. I think it was
jumped right into one?
Mercedes-Benz in 2015 or 16 or something. I did 2 5Ks before the half marathon, like 3 weeks prior. And I did the half marathon in Birmingham cold turkey. And my foot hurt for 4 months after. To your point, you have to train up for that.
You have to train.
You have to. You have to do it.
So don't get overwhelmed. I know you hear Brady saying, hey, do this. Like, start small and do these things, because you're going to get into a habit. You're going to create that. And then it's also just going to help you in your daily time schedule. Like for me, Brady, you've always taught us, put it in your calendar. Do this. Put everything in your calendar day in to end. You're saying do what works for you. For me, it doesn't. And it always was. I feel like there's a lot of times I spent more time moving my schedule around than actually doing it. So I found if I write down the things that I need to complete before lunch, rather than put them in a calendar for me, I knew, hey, before lunch, I need to have that marked off. And
So-
that's where it helped me for that.
So that's a great point, because some people do have to actually physically write it down. It helps their their mental state to be able to do that, and being able to check those things off, you feel accomplished. You feel like you've done something for the day. Totally get that. For people like me, I operate on a calendar and a task list concept. I happen to use Apple products, iPhone, Mac, whatever. For you Android people, I have no idea what you guys have available.
Evernote, Todoist.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You got Evernote, things like that.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's
Notion.
cross platform.
I'm sure there's an Android some kind of platform that does all that. But anyway, for me, I have to, very similar to Adam, I'm kind of the opposite, where I have to have a task list. I use reminders, and I have for each company, like whether it's our ServPro company, our church, our podcast, whatever those things are, different categories, and I'll set up different tasks associated. But I take it one step further. I actually put a time on the task. So if I want to do it, to your point, in the morning, I'll put 8 o'clock. If I want to do it in the afternoon, I'll put 1 o'clock. And then on my calendar, it has my meeting schedule for my calendars. And again, everybody's different in how they operate. But to your point, some people have to physically write it down, but there are tools available for you that you have on the go with you all the time if you needed to use, like a reminders app and a calendar app. There's a book out there, I think it's called Eat That Frog. And we may have talked about this on the podcast a while back.
It's a good
I
book.
love the book because, to Brady's point, I don't read a lot of books. I should read more. I did start Death by Meeting, Brady. I have started the
Nice.
book, not the
I wish I
audio
could hide
version.
right now. 'Cause he's talking about it.
Not the audio
Adam,
version.
have you read it yet?
I have not.
But I actually downloaded it on my iPad because I have my iPad everywhere. I just want to, scroll through and read it. I didn't want a physical book because honestly, if I bought the actual book, like bound book, it would probably end up sitting on a shelf, or I could just give it to someone. Maybe I should do that. I don't know.
I can confirm that you're the way you do things works, because listeners, if it is on Benji's task list, he will not leave you alone until he can mark it off.
Oh, and to
Truth.
that point, it's not
Truth.
just mark it off. It's I set myself reminders to remind other
You
people
can
to do
almost
things.
mark your clock to it. If he texts you at one point, it's going to be a couple days later if it
until
is
it's
not.
done.
Oh, yeah.
Until it's done. But that's what works for me.
Your
So
system works though.
Yeah. Your system works for you. My system works for me. Brady probably has somewhat of a blend of systems. I see him using his what is that thing called, Brady? What is it
I was
called?
gonna say,
Remarkable.
what is your system?
Remarkable.
Benji?
So
Brady, what
I've
is
got
your
it.
system?
I've gone old school a little bit, because I'm very, I like to use technology, but I've learned this year for some reason that I do enjoy writing things down. Like I remember things. So I got a Remarkable. It's a electronic version. It's kind of like the best of both worlds. But hey, I was
correct me if
gonna
I'm
tell
wrong.
you-
You can save that, right, to like a document.
Oh
that
yeah,
goes-
yeah. Yeah, so
That's
it's all
cool.
electronic, and typically what I do, and that's a little bit double work, but I'll write things down, and maybe we'll talk about this in a future podcast, but like every Friday, I'll go back through all my notes for the week and then put the actionable items that I need to do on my to-do list for the next week. But maybe we do that. But I was going to tell you guys, there's one thing, so we're talking about the power of writing down goals. There's one goal that you will probably never see me write down, and Benji talked about running. That is not going to be a part of my goals. Okay. Now let me tell you why. Okay. I think that Proverbs is really clear about
Lord.
this.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Here we go.
And here's what it says. It says only the wicked run when they are not being chased.
I can tell if
Okay.
my wife's listening in the car right now, she's praising Jesus. I've heard that. I can tell you.
Only the wicked run when they're not being chased. So listen, I've got a biblical reason now not to run as a part of my goal setting. So
There you go. But we're not wicked. So there, even though
that's true.
we're not
That's
wicked.
true.
We're not wicked. But I will say, going back to that book, Eat That Frog. It was a simple book, big letters, really small book, and basically it talks about achieving the big rock for the day. So if you could envision a jar and you put a big rock in the jar, everything else that surrounds that rock, that is your one big thing that you have to get done today.
Mm-hmm.
And then what people do is they'll fill it with little pebbles around that rock, so it kind of fills in the rest of the jar. And then they will add sand to it. So sand will get in the crevices of the little rocks, and fill in around the big rock. And there's only one other thing you can do is put water in it. So water will actually fill in everything else. So to your point, there's always different ways to achieve your goal writing down. Guys, I'm just going to throw this out there. I think it'd be good if we did another episode to
I was
continue
going to
this
say,
topic.
guys, we've got a lot more notes here, and I feel like we've barely scratched the surface.
Because we've got
like I said, I could talk about this all day.
We've got a lot to talk about, and I would again be remiss if I didn't tell you again, listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Share this podcast with someone. We just want to help people, not in their business, but in their personal, spiritual life as well.
Yeah.
You can connect with us on social. We're on all the platforms, Instagram, TikTok, which, by the way, TikTok seems to be blowing up out there. So subscribe, Higher Up Podcast. We appreciate you guys. Go out there and live a higher up life. See you soon.